Okay, Tom, first of all, thank you so much for making this happen. I know it's very early at your time, very early. And so you make it easier for me because it's not so late up here in the evening to do this. So very much appreciated.
It's early musician time. It's everybody else is already up and about, but for musicians, it's early.
For musicians, it's early. Yeah, they just went to sleep.
Yeah.
Okay, Tom, we've met at the Soul Festival, at the 5th Soul Festival in Blackpool. And you were joined by a gentleman, and the name was Jimmy Delph. And he was first announced for the Soul Festival in 2019. And I must admit, I'm totally honest with you, it didn't ring a bell. So I tried to do some research because I'm not so much into the Northern Soul stuff. I'm not a 45 person, I'm an albums person. And so I did some research and I found many blog postings by people who said, well, I found the single, some singles of the singer, but I have no information about him. What is he doing? Is he still alive? Why did he stop recording? What happened to him? And who is Jimmy Delph? So I would like to ask you, I think, as one of the first, to tell us, before you tell us how you found him, who is he? What happened to him? And what is his story?
Well, I think Jimmy Delphs is the greatest undiscovered musical talent that I ever met. I mean, he has the sweetness of Marvin Gaye, the funkiness of Wilson Pickett, and the everything of Otis Redding. He's just a master at the idiom of soul music. Jimmy Delphs was born in Mississippi. His family moved to Detroit when he was a young boy, and he grew up between Detroit, Michigan, and Ohio, Toledo, Ohio. And in 1967, he released his first record, which was on the Karen or Carla record label, managed by and owned by Ollie McLaughlin. And that record, sadly, it did pretty well during the Detroit riots of 1967, but it sadly summed up his career in a way, because it's called Almost, but Not Quite. Jimmy was a regional star in the Midwest, in the upper Midwest, and he toured with the support of that record, or in support of that record, and continued to put out fabulous records up until 1977. And I think the reason he stopped making records is that soul music, I'm talking about Motown soul music, was out of favor. I think people don't remember this, but from the early 1970s until a watershed event occurred in the 1980s, soul music was considered passé. There was a little bit of a bump with disco, but soul music was not in vogue until the movie Big Chill came out. The movie Big Chill came out, and I don't know the exact date, but it was early 1980s. And the soundtrack of that record reminded everybody how great soul music is. So the problem is that Jimmy had sort of retired from singing. I played with Jimmy in his backup band from about 1981 to 1982, and at that point, soul music hadn't yet made its comeback, and Jimmy needed to put food on the table, so he took a job as a sanitation worker in either Ann Arbor, Michigan, or Ypsilanti, Michigan, and he worked hard at that career for over a decade and retired in the early 2000s. So that tells you a little bit about who Jimmy was, and the people such as yourself who have some of his singles can see what I'm talking about, his mastery of soul music. And I think he put on a show that nobody will forget, who was there at Winter's Gardens in Blackpool.
And what I thought
last month.
Yeah, and what I thought was very touching, and I think after he left the stage, he was crying because he couldn't believe that the people all knew his songs and all of this after all the years. I do love his recording of "Do You Know What I Mean?" I think that was his last recording in 1977. It's very sad that he didn't go into that direction, because it was, I call it satin soul, soft soul, disco soul, something around that. And I wish he would have done an album. He never made an album. He's like only singles person, and there is no album. Do you know why that he just went into the studio, recorded that song and left? Or is there unreleased material?
Well, there might be unreleased material. The story of Karen and Carla record labels is that Ollie McLaughlin passed away and his son inherited the business. And I've heard from some people that his son had just not organized enough to go through the archives and release some of the music that may still be there.
That's a sad affair.
Yeah, it is, because I mean, I certainly agree with you. I think You Know What I Mean is one of his masterpieces. And it is a little bit, it shows evolution of music, because shortly before that record, jazz or jazz fusion or jazz funk music came into vogue. And I think that song, it's interesting because at the Blackpool Festival last month, they also brought Irene Karn to the festival, and she had some magnificent hits in that genre, with a little bit more instrumentation, a little bit more open sound. So I do know what you mean, and I do know what you mean, to quote Jimmy, and I do love that record. Loved it when I played it with Jimmy, and I still love it today. That record, that record was arranged by Paul Reiser, who was a very prominent Motown arranger. In fact, he's prominently featured in the movie Standing in the Shadows of Motown.
Yeah.
They interviewed Paul Reiser at length. So I think that track really benefited from Paul Reiser's arrangements.
Absolutely. And the funny thing is, we have on one side you have the vocal recordings, and on the other side it's the instrumental. And I was always wondering, oh, we can see that.
Yes.
It says the instrumental.
Yes.
I was always wondering why not putting another song on it instead of the instrumental, but I've seen it in some records back in the days that they put an instrumental on the B side, or a mono or a stereo version.
Yeah, I think they may have been in a hurry to get the record out. Maybe they saw that the audience was, growing smaller and smaller. Yeah, I'm not sure why they did that, but yes, I am aware of that.
But I think it's a huge development if we see it from Mrs. Percy, Please Have Mercy, to Feels Like Summer's Coming On, to this 1970s. There's a huge development in his singing and everything. So I think back then he was absolutely at his peak, and I wished they would have pushed that a little more, or give him a better opportunity, because that would have led to the 80s where his vocals would also fit in the pop music, which came up at that particular point. So that's, I think, is very sad.
Oh, the tracking is not so good. I'm having a little trouble hearing you, and it's
No problem.
well. I would just say that I think Jimmy's performance at Blackpool shows that he really may not have even reached his peak yet. I mean, he's still developing as an artist. He's still, he's still doing a fantastic job of it. It was really wonderful to see him at Blackpool.
He sounded almost like on the record. We need to point out that all people on Blackpool are singing live. There is no what's the English word for that?
TV tracks.
Something like this. There's nothing like this. There's an orchestra. There's not an orchestra, but there's a band. There are backing vocals, and all the artists who are appearing there are singing live without any exception. So what we had was the real deal. And sometimes I was like, my boy, it sounds just like he did the same note like Eddie Holman, where like it sounds just like on the record. And these people are in the 70s, 80s, and it's like, I can't believe it.
Yes. Yes, I know what you mean.
So I have here a recent picture of Jimmy, and he's still pretty fit, and he was very, he was very much moving on stage and everything. That was very awesome to see.
Well, Jimmy and I had a good chance to catch up. I hadn't seen him since I found him, and that's another story you might want to go into. Is
absolutely.
Yeah. So Jimmy and I had a lot of time to spend together during the festival, and I discovered that Jimmy, like me, is an avid bicycle rider, and Jimmy loves to get on his bike first thing in the morning and go for a multi-mile hike on his bike. And I think that's part of the explanation of his being in such good shape.
Wow. So tell me the story. How did you find him? So if people are eager to find someone coming from soul or something, what do these people need to do?
Yes. So as I mentioned, I played with Jimmy in 1981 to 1982 in the Detroit, Michigan area. And I was part of his backup band. And Jimmy was in fabulous form. He was a great band leader. He was kind of like not Marvin Gaye. He was kind of like famous soul singer who used to fine the band members if they made a mistake.
James Brown.
James Brown. That was a James Brown story. That's right. Thank you. Jimmy was sort of that ilk. I mean, he was a taskmaster, but he knew how the records are supposed to sound, and he was a great band leader, still is. So I met Jimmy through some other musicians, and he asked me to be in his backup band, and I played in it until I started law school in 1982, went in a different direction with my career. But Jimmy and I touched base a few times over the years, but not very often. But I often remembered him and remembered what a talent he was. And so as soul music made staged a comeback, I thought about getting back in touch with Jimmy. But in 1980, 2008, I had some time on my hands and I wondered about Jimmy. So I Googled him. Google was, pretty new at the time, I'd say, or it wasn't as commonplace as it is today. But I couldn't find Jimmy per se at that time on the internet, but I did learn about the Northern Soul movement, and I noticed that there were a lot of messages on message boards, which used to be popular on the internet, about Jimmy, and it was mostly people wondering who is he, where is he, and then at the same time I learned about Northern Soul and how the British in in the north of England had an appropriate respect for this music, and would have all night raves listening to soul records. And I just thought to myself that it would be perfect to bring Jimmy out, to find Jimmy and bring him out of retirement, wherever he was, and have him sing in England to people who would understand and appreciate what he, the gifts that he could bring. So I kept looking for him on the internet, and that wasn't paying off. So we had a mutual friend in Michigan, and I was in California at the time. So the friend volunteered to go with me to Toledo, Ohio, because for some reason we thought that he would be in Toledo. May have actually had some. I think we may have had some heads up that he was in Toledo, Ohio, singing in the Ebenezer Baptist Church. And so my friend and I went to Toledo, to the neighborhood of Ebenezer Baptist Church, and we started wandering the streets and knocking on doors. Now this all was happening in about 2018. So from 2008 to 2018, I just tried to find Jimmy on the internet because I was 2,000 miles away in California. But in 2018, we got serious and we went to Toledo and started knocking on doors in this neighborhood. And lo and behold, somebody knew Jimmy and pointed us in the direction of his house. And so we went to Jimmy's house after I hadn't seen Jimmy in, let's see, I don't know, 30 years, something like that. And we knocked on the door, and my friend was there with me. And Jimmy's wife came down, and we explained to her that we were musicians looking for Jimmy with a possible gig, and that we were probably stretching the truth on the possibility of a gig because we just had a dream that we could get him over to England and perform at the Blackpool Festival. But Jimmy was raring to go. He was right there. He was absolutely interested. He said, "If the people are interested, I'm going to sing." And so that's what happened. We found Jimmy, and I started corresponding with Richard Searling, and there was interest right away in Jimmy because of his music. And interestingly, Richard was working on his book at the time, and had already decided to devote a page to Jimmy. And I think that page in Richard's book provides a lot more information about Jimmy and his place in soul music. So we lined up the gig for festival for 2019 had already been booked. So we decided to try to present Jimmy in 2000. That's what we did. We lined up a gig for Jimmy at Blackpool, but then of course the 2019 festival got canceled. They bumped Jimmy over to 2020. I'm sorry, the 2020 concert was canceled, and then they bumped Jimmy over to 2021. That show was canceled too. So we finally got set for 2022, and that's what we've just been to England to do, was the show last month in England.
Yeah, and what a great show it was. Everybody was kind of eager. There was a huge line of people who wanted to get his signature from the middle in the beginning to the end of the building to get his signature and get a picture taken with him. And I think he was pretty much blown away and very surprised about the reaction of the people.
Yeah, and Jimmy is 77 years old, and his vocal pipes are still very supple. He has great control, great mastery of his singing voice. And I'm looking forward to more shows.
So when people want to get in touch with Jimmy, or they want to book him or something, what do they need to do?
Well, they can certainly reach out to me. I'm in close contact with Jimmy, and we'd be happy to bring Jimmy out of retirement again.
So you are available via Facebook?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook, Tom Douvan, Douvan, and that would be a good way to reach me.
All right. So yeah, Tom, thank you so much for that little insight. And I'm sure so many people next to me want to know the story about Jimmy, because there's nothing out there. And maybe if you're coming to Germany or Netherlands or somewhere where we'll be doing gigs, hopefully we can have a little sit-down interview and he can tell his story in his own words. But I really appreciate that you gave us some more detail into Jimmy's life. So thanks once again for making it possible so early, for your time, for telling me the story. And yeah, I'm pretty sure we hear very soon from each other.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Hollywood, California, baby, the land of the movie star. Listen, Chi-Town, Chicago, baby, people ain't too shy. And his whole life through, yeah, only to find he ran out of time. He didn't live, see his dreams come true. Oh, baby, but he almost, with your woman by your side and your trouble ain't to rest. Whisper sweet things in her ear and let nature do the rest. Do you know what I mean? Ooh, when the wind plays a song that puts your mind